meet you.
Hi, Mark, nice to meet you.
Jared, it's nice to meet you.
Mark,
Jordan.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Team Yankee, you will have 20 minutes to present your solutions to the judges. You will be given a warning when 5 and 2 minutes remain. After 20 minutes, the presentation will be stopped immediately. No information will be considered after 20 minutes has left. Following your presentation, there will be a 10-minute question and answer. You will be given a warning when 2 minutes remain. The question and answer will be stopped after 10 minutes. You may begin when ready.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Jordan, and I'm followed by my colleagues Carolyn, Mark, and Jared, and we are Team Yankee. Before we get started now, we would just like to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be here with us today. So just for a quick overview of Mastercard, it is a leading global purchasing and technology company that facilitates payments through merchants and consumers. They are a very large international company. They do operate in 210 countries through 150 currencies worldwide. They're also a very healthy company. Over the past 5 years, they have an annualized EPS rate of nearly 18%. So the ideal framework for automation investment decisions, that is the question that we are asked throughout this case. We were given 4 different types of automation, which is artificial intelligence, robot processing, automation, fit for purpose, and IT automation. We are also given these 5 criteria to use throughout our strategic process. These include employee engagement, which means how are the employees going to be involved in the technology, how are they going to create value-added activities. It's very important to have a speed to market, but you also need to make sure that the technology that you are implementing is very reliable for the customers. And also you want to implement this technology without adding new employees to the company.
So as we move on to our SWOT analysis, obviously our biggest strength would be the presence in our markets. As Jordan said, we are currently in 210 countries worldwide. So that pretty much means wherever you go, if you're traveling for recreational fun or business trip where you want to move somewhere in the world, Mastercard will be there. With that comes our payment processing. This goes with the 150 currencies. Also, so wherever you want to go, Mastercard will be there to back you up. We also have cybersecurity. Now you may be wondering why cybersecurity is our strengths and our threats. Through our research, we have found that there are obviously many people are going to try to hack into a credit card company. That's never going to go away. That's exactly what people are trying to do and take advantage of the fact that people might have compromised information. But through our research, we have found that Mastercard has never had a major security breach, so that really proves that their customer satisfaction and putting their customers first in security is their top priority. Then we have our opportunities. So with our digital payments, the world is fast. It is changing. Everyone is go, go, go. With our digital payments, everyone's looking for a one-click, a one-tap, fast-moving cycle. So this is definitely an opportunity to go into and really attack this market so everybody can stay fast-paced on the go. With that, we have our biometric and contactless technology. That would be the facial recognition, the fingerprints, anything that can have our security be the top priority for our customers. And we have our emerging markets. So we are already in 210 countries worldwide. We can use those countries that we are already in and really push forward into those markets and explore into new ones. So now we're going to move over to our weaknesses and our threats.
So competition, we do not have very many competitors, but the competitors that we do have, they do take up a large portion of the market share. Visa is the #1 competitor, as they do take up the most market share, and we will discuss this more in a further presentation. For security, the hackers, you always have to make sure that you are keeping them down. They're always trying to hack into consumer accounts, so you need Mastercard needs to make sure that they're keeping up with the security to make sure that there's no fraudulent activity happening. Because there's few competitors, there's many antitrust laws. So Mastercard needs to make sure that they are the forerunner of these new technologies that they're implementing. Now the government wants to protect consumers, so they implement many regulations, which can be very costly to companies. And service disruptions is any sort of external factor that can cause a disruption in service. This can be anything like severe weather conditions or the political or economic instability.
All right, so moving right along the industry environment. Mastercard operates in the global credit card industry, obviously, which is mainly being driven by fast growth in cybersecurity and fintech technology innovation. So, pretty interesting statistic is that by 2021, it's predicted that e-commerce sales are going to total about $4.5 trillion, and that would represent an annualized growth rate of around 12.7%. Now, within the U.S., it's estimated that about 346 million people own credit cards, and of that number, about 75.7% of them said that they own more than 2 credit cards. Now, on the issue of cybersecurity, about 46% of Americans have indicated that they have either been compromised or their account has seen unusual activity in the past 5 years, which strengthens the argument that these companies really need to focus on cybersecurity and protecting their consumers' data. Now, moving on to some trends that are shaping the industry going forward, like we touched on before, contactless transactions such as Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, and biometric technology are increasing security and speed and accessibility for day-to-day consumers. Customer satisfaction is also kind of a part of that. Consumers want their payment transactions to be quick, seamless, and utilize the newest technologies. So these companies have to make sure that they are utilizing those technologies. Usage rewards are another aspect that a lot of these companies are competing over now. With so many different offerings that a consumer can choose from, these credit card companies have to distinguish themselves by offering the highest cashback rewards, flight miles, sign-on bonuses, things that are going to make people want to choose that card over another. And obviously, theft prevention, as we touched on. A lot of these companies are getting real big on cybersecurity and wanting to make sure that their consumers' data is at the forefront of everything they do. Moving on, some challenges for the industry are the card not present fraud. And that's kind of something that's come along in the past couple of years with the internet. Before, you need physical access to somebody's credit card to get their information. And now with a lot of online transactions, a lot of these hackers have found ways to not even need physical access to the card to access the information. Another challenge going forward is just economic data, interest rates. Within the U.S. and even without Europe as well, there's been a lot of uncertainty as to the direction that interest rates are going to go. So if they go up too high, it will increase the cost of borrowing for consumers and businesses, which could drive down the amount that a lot of these consumers are willing to borrow. And as well as consumer debts, we've noticed that personal consumer debt levels in the United States are at their highest level since 2007 before the financial crisis. So if we saw like a sharp drawback in economic conditions and people not being able to pay back their debts, higher default rates, that could definitely hurt a lot of the firms operating within this industry.
So moving on to our credit card payment facilitators competitive analysis. We touched on Visa before. So here's Mastercard against their top competitors, which Visa, American Express, and Discover in that order. Now Mastercard has 200 million cards in circulation right now, so that we already know that wherever you go, you're going to be able to use it. We also have the advantage with countries of operation. We are the leading one in all 4 of these credit cards. That really proves just again how wherever you go, you're going to be able to use it. And that doesn't have to be a worry, and you have 150 currencies to go through. Now you may be seeing the 52.7% market share for Visa, and that might seem a little intimidating. But that also includes their debit card. And Visa really focuses on their debit card shares rather than credit, so this is where Mastercard can come in and really swoop in and take the actual credit card within the whole payment facilities group. Lastly, we have our merchant fees. Now this is for the business side of what companies accept Mastercard and all of this. We have relatively low merchant fees compared to our other competitors. This will really push for businesses to accept Mastercard, and with that, it will allow consumers to want to use their Mastercards. So overall, out of all of our competitors, with Mastercard, Visa, American Express, and Discover, it really proves that Mastercard is really swooping in and taking over the market. Even though Visa might have a higher market share percentage, they also focus more on debit cards rather than the actual credit cards. So moving on, we're going to be going to our strategy of what automation we have chosen and why we have. So Jared,
all right, so now we get down to the real question. The question is, what method should MasterCard choose to implement into the workplace? Out of the 4 that we had seen, with the criteria that we also took heavily into consideration, we chose robotic process automation, or simply put, RPA. Now, to do this, we devised 3 main steps in order to implement this. The first being plan for the digital workforce. Secondly, we want to embrace the change in the workplace as much as possible. And then lastly, we want to capitalize on the enhancements from this implementation. The implementation from this automated process is very essential for the success and or failure of this project. Mastercard will be involving some funds into this, so this definitely has to be carefully planned and carefully implemented in order to succeed. Now, for the first step, we have planned for the digital workforce. I have a quote here, and this says, technology supporting people, people supporting technology. This is going to represent the shift that will be happening from the automation in the Mastercard workplace, in which the people are not the main source of labor, but the technology is. The technology will be doing all the redundant, boring work that the people do not have to do anymore. And Mastercard can truly focus their efforts with their employees on things that truly matter, on more positive, high-value projects. Moving forward here, about 38% of corporations that implemented RPA have actually done this enterprise-wide. So they did this in a large-scale basis, and this shows how prominent this force can be and how much it can impact an employee's day-to-day work environment. Next, when people think of automation, they think of cost-cutting, but that's not actually the main purpose of automation. Automation is implemented to make things more productive, and in fact, out of a study of about 500 companies that implemented RPA processes, 86% of them said that productivity was either met or exceeded in the workplace from this process. And moving forward, of course, with automation, you do save money. You don't necessarily have to cut costs, but there are cost efficiencies. And 61% of these companies also said that they were met and or exceeded. Now, moving towards the second step, embrace the change in the workplace. This is going to be a process that is major overall. This will impact an employee's day-to-day basis. So, with the boost in productivity that I established in the last slide, this will allow employees to focus on what matters. This will allow Mastercard to focus on high-value project propositions and have their highly skilled workers not focus on the redundant tasks that they can simply have a software do. There's no need to do it if they can focus on bigger and better things. So now this actually can be supported with the full-time employee reduction rate that RPA technology allows. With a 43% reduction rate, about 4 in 10 employees can focus on better and bigger tasks. This will make the Mastercard day more efficient for every employee and also more fulfilling for employee morale. Now, lastly, we have 90% of companies that implemented RPA said that the data processing process was done with more quality and accuracy. So this will uphold Mastercard's prestigious reputation in having a safe, smart, and efficient way of payment in the workforce. Lastly, we have capitalized on the enhancements. When you're trying to be innovative and implementing new technology, there's no point if you don't see the results. Well, in this case, the payback period is about 11.5 months when utilizing RPA technology. This will be taking into consideration implementation and also full scalability. Moving forward, in order to fully ensure the success of this project, there must be employee technology synergy created in the workforce. This has to be done in order to have long-term growth and success and truly realize the potential of the technology that will be implemented. And lastly, responsive decision-making and rule improvements must be done. RPA is object-oriented. If you're familiar with coding, that's a very simple term. However, if a leader does not keep up with it and does not maintain this process, then the RPA technology cannot reach its full potential and make sure that processes are fully updated with new events that may occur. Next, with the study that we had of about 500 companies, when they fully implemented RPA technology at full scale, that 78% of them actually went on to invest more money into this technology. So this just shows how prominent this is industry-wide and in specific in the financial market. Moving forward.
All right, so moving right along to financials. So what we wanted to do was develop a model that could quantify the total amount of cost synergies that a company like Mastercard could realize by fully implementing an RPA strategy. So some basic assumptions that we had to make to develop our model was we took the initial investment cost that the case produced of about $6 million for the initial investment cost. During our research, we concluded that each RPA bot costs about $15,000 to deploy, and that it would reduce full-time employee reduction rate by about 43%. And we had to take a closer look at Mastercard's corporate structure, and we found out that the company employs about 14,800 total employees, with about 2,300 of them working in the IT department. We also had to look at some basic salary information on some of the software engineers within the company. So we found out that a senior software engineer typically makes about 45, 67 an hour, with some of the lower level, entry level positions coming in at about 30, 29. And then obviously, we had to take into account on an annual scale, a 40-hour work week would come out to about 2,080 hours per year. So plugging that all into the model, we ran two different scenarios. One was our baseline of 100% entry-level salaries that would give us kind of a minimum baseline that we could see for cost synergies. But then we wanted to take a little more realistic approach, and we assumed that in a team of 10, there would be one leader that would likely take up the senior level role. Now, in both models, we found out that the $6 million investment cost would be able to buy about 400 bots, and that would free about 989 full-time employees. The amount of hours that you would save between all those employees would be just over 2 million hours per year. So based off the baseline level, you would save about $62 million in cost synergies. Minus your initial investment, you would come to about $56 million per year. And then the more realistic 9-to-1 ratio, you'd come out to about $59 million. And that would bring you anywhere between in monthly synergies about $4.6 to $4.9 million based off your initial $6 million investment.
So, in conclusion, we come to the question, what is the ideal framework for automation investment decisions? The solution that we had chose was RPA, or robotic processing technology. With employee engagement, employees will be able to focus on what actually matters. With this process implemented, they will not have to do the redundant tasks and can fully go on to focus on the highly valued projects that Mastercard will indeed offer, since they are quite the innovative company, to say the least. The speed to market was about 11.5 months with full implementation, and you'll see the results because that's your payback period as well. Reputationally, this was from the statistic that I had gathered earlier, with about 90% accuracy and quality improvements from corporations who implemented RPA technology. This will also continue to allow Mastercard to recognize that they are truly an accurate company, precise, safe, smart, and efficient. And then lastly, the ability to scale technology without adding employee staff. Well, in fact, you don't have to cut any staff either. We want to create an environment in Mastercard in which employees and technology can create a perfect synergy. We want to make the workplace as efficient as possible, and we believe Mastercard can do this. And with this method, we believe that this is very possible, and I hope they do so. And I just want to thank you guys for your time, and this was very enjoyable, and thank you. Any questions?
Sure. Congratulations for that. By the way, congratulations also for the work you put here, and I assume that you didn't sleep too much last night. So, well, I appreciate all your efforts. I'm going to give you a metaphor, but before I'm going to say that I will frame this from two perspectives. One is I'm the user and I have a couple of credit cards in my pocket. Some of them are Mastercard, and I would like to be able to use them as I wish. I'm afraid about fraud, but at the same time, I would also like to decide what is that Mastercard would do to allow me to make a purchase or not. I mean, when should I be blocked from, or whoever wants to do a fraud with using my numbers would be blocked. So that's my freedom, that's what I want to use. Now, as a decision maker, I'm faced today with 20 projects, and I have to decide which one should I sign in to go forward. I'm going to sign for a couple of $1 million. Now, the metaphor is like this. I would let I have a conveyor belt with onions coming out, and I would let the user to decide how the user wants to describe the rotten onion. And then the RPA technology that is proposed in front of me is going to execute exactly that rule. But I run a risk of actually not having a very good description of the rotten onion, and some of them are going to go through and therefore spoil the rest of the crop. So help me to understand, how should I make this decision when I want to let the user to make their own decisions, because that But at the same time, I'm worried that by processing exactly on that rule, then I'm actually going to put the problems in the bank's hands because they have to swallow the losses on the transaction. Help me to understand how your solution can help me solve this problem.
So RPA technology, as we know, is object-oriented. You have to make and implement rules for the technology to actually implement those rules. One way Mastercard could get a direct opinion from the people is to simply just ask them what they would like, what rules they would like to implement into their system and what they would want to classify as fraud. So they can do this with various ways. One that immediately comes to mind is simply filling out a survey or just going to your settings and having customizable abilities, potentially in-app, because we are moving into the digital age, and I'm sure a lot of people have apps in which they check on their financial services. But I believe that would be the best way to truly directly contact the consumer to see what they classify as fraud. However, I do believe Mastercard should also have a set standard for what they set into the RPA process as rules for this to recognize what fraud really is.
And to kind of add on to that a little bit, what's been kind of taking place in the industry, there's a trend of behavioral-based profiling within a lot of these credit cards. So they'll take user information such as locations that you swipe your card, the time of day that you swipe your card, where you typically buy things, a lot of different scenarios. So one thing that they could do is kind of have, like he said, custom ability within the app, so you can customize like price points that you would feel comfortable purchasing that would be within your normal range, or maybe geographic locations that you might find yourself buying, so that you kind of have control over what you deemed suspicious. The end user, that you would deem suspicious. So it would be a combination of Mastercard's algorithms combined with user input within the app.
Going forward, we did mention that Mastercard has never had a major security breach, so the things that are in place to prevent fraud are already working very well. They haven't had a major breach of their card compromise or anything. So everything that's already implemented in there, we can keep that moving forward. We can learn from that. We can see what doesn't work, what does work. If it keeps working, keep using it, and then add on to that.
A question on, and very good presentation, by the way, excellent with showing return on investment. But what about change management, any implementation plan there, right? I'm a Mastercard employee, you come in and say, robotic anything, I'm going to fear, morale and employee type of impact. What does that mean for me? So did you cover anything for a change management plan?
So with RPA, we actually did really focus on the implementation process of this, because this is not something you can just simply go in and mention. Because people do fear, when you say automation, they fear about losing their job. That's the number one thing that I've noticed just moving forward with any autonomous technology that people recognize. So the difference between this is you still need people to look over it and go in and physically enter the rule standards and really just monitor it at all times. And what this will do is it's going to take the tasks that you don't want to do anyway, entering data, finding things, the redundant task in the workplace, and it's going to allow your employees that you hire to do more productive things and to grow as an employee and fulfill themselves in more, satisfying ways, more creative outlets potentially, more innovative things that Mastercard truly wants their employees to really develop and move forward with, rather than having to sit down and maintain the database center in which the RPA robotics can simply handle themselves.
I think in simplified terms, basically there's two ways you can look at it. You could lay off employees, or you could take the same labor that you already have and use that towards more productive, innovative things. So I think what we really tried to highlight was that a lot of these RPA functions would be kind of just tackling the remedial kind of grunt work, hitting switches and whatnot. So if you could allocate less labor hours to that, you could have them maybe develop new app features, develop new security standards, things that would actually innovate and drive growth within the company rather than like remedial grunt work.
Yeah, I would not recommend actually laying off the employees when you could just simply reallocate your resources, and it could end up being quite lucrative, as you can see from our models that we produced.
Anything I can do cost to RPA? I know we had a lot of savings that you had. What was the cost for the RPA part?
So we assumed that they were not going to develop the RPA structures in-house, and they would take them from outside firm. Typically, they're licensed, and from the research we found, they came out to normally about $15,000 per server to run on this RPA structure. So we came out to that 400 number that you'd be able to afford. So really, it's more just purchasing outside licenses at a fixed unit cost, more so than labor, which could vary. So that was represented.
So the 400 was based on the
400
previous
was based
budget.
off the 6 million number that was given.
Yes.
That was, got it, thank you for clarifying. And can I get something sooner than 11 and a half months?
Well, when you're going about the implementation process, if you do rush this, this is going to be something that can actually backfire a lot. So when you're implementing this, many companies try and get this done as fast as possible and don't truly change the workplace environment, because instead of having the people going in and do their normal jobs and all that, you need to give them that sense of, okay, you're going to rely on this technology, you're going to believe in the automation process, and you're not going to fear it, but you're going to use it as a tool to advance yourself and your career and overall advance the workplace. So if you rush this process, it can end up backfiring quite a lot. That's why we put the 11.5 payback period, but it also is subjective on the company, the scale of which the company implements this technology, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, the 11.5 figure was kind of an industry standard based off the research that we found other companies that have implemented it. If you went off of these numbers solely, you're looking at upwards of about $5 million in monthly cost synergies. So at that point, you could really be at the 1 month point over $6 million investment. So that would be sooner than your 3 months.
So I think I heard you saying that you would not recommend us to fire any of current employees, and that satisfies us in terms of the quality, because we're going to continue to do business as usual. But at the same time, I would like to understand how would you actually change and control the quality of the rules that the user puts in place, because I heard you saying, well, you are going to look at what's in the past history, but the user wants something else. How is the user going to be informed, and how is that going to impact the final decision of going or not going with the project?
Well, the software engineers that are maintaining the robotics will actually be the ones who go and make the rules and implement the rules for the technology.
So not the user.
The user can go in and customize it. That will get relayed to the software engineer, and then the software engineer can go in for the specific user's, I guess you would say, account, and then implement the quote-unquote rule.
Me as a user, I will pick up a couple of checkboxes from the menu that is offered to me.
A checkbox, it could even just be a text box in which you send a feedback and you get whatever you get.
I'm sorry, your time's up now. The question and answer session.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you for your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys are
Good job.
already out.
Good job.
Thank you.